Greetings, fellow Obsidizens. Welcome to another video in the Obsidian for Noobs video series featuring tutorials, tips, and tools for new users of the Obsidian Personal Knowledge Management software. In today's video, I'll be covering Obsidian's Web Viewer. I'll first explain each feature of the Web Viewer, and then I'll follow the explanation with a demonstration in Obsidian. The specific topics to be covered in this video are as follows. What is the Obsidian Web Viewer? How to enable the Web Viewer plugin, how to configure the Web Viewer settings, how to launch the Web Viewer, reader mode, saving web page content, using bookmarks, show history, using more actions, that's 3 vertical dots in the interface, Web Viewer benefits, and security concerns. The Web Viewer is a core plugin in Obsidian that allows you to open and browse websites directly within the Obsidian interface. The Web Viewer is basically a limited functionality web browser. It lacks the fancy bells and whistles of a fully functional web browser, but it provides sufficient utility to permit useful web browsing. This capability of having a built-in web viewer eliminates the need to constantly switch between Obsidian and your system's web browser during research sessions, making it easier to read linked content without needing to leave Obsidian. Although it's not a full-featured web browser, the Obsidian Web Viewer lets you utilize reader mode to strip away ads and formatting, save web page content to your vault in Markdown format, bookmark websites, and access a history of visited websites. Before you can use the Web Viewer, you first must enable it in Obsidian settings. And we do that as follows. First, open Obsidian settings. That's the gear icon at the bottom of the left side panel. Then once in settings, click on Core Plugins on the left. In the Core Plugins window, scroll down to the Web Viewer and turn it on by sliding the switch to the right. And I'll demonstrate this shortly. Once you've enabled the Web Viewer, there are a few settings you need to configure. To open the Web Viewer settings, first, open Obsidian settings, again, the gear icon at the bottom of the left side panel. In Settings, click on Core Plugins. In the Core Plugins window, scroll down to the Web Viewer and click on the gear icon. With the Web Viewer settings now open, you can configure the Web Viewer. You can make Obsidian open all external links in Obsidian's Web Viewer instead of in your PC's default web browser. You can set a home page for the Web Viewer. You can designate a folder in your vault in which to put saved web pages. You can choose your preferred search engine to be used when searching from the Web Viewer's address bar. You can enable an ad blocker, designate ad blocking rules, and set a frequency in days for updating the ad blocker rules. And you can clear the Web Viewer data, which allows you to delete the cookies, browser cache, and/or the browsing history. All right, let me demonstrate these things now. Okay, I'm in my test vault. Let's begin by looking at how we enable the Web Viewer plugin. As I said a moment ago, we begin by clicking on the gear icon at the bottom of the left side panel to get into Obsidian settings. And then once in settings, we click on Core Plugins over here on the left, because the Web Viewer is a core plugin in Obsidian. Everything here is alphabetical, so we scroll down till we get near the end to the W's, and we see Web Viewer here. And to enable it, we click the switch on. I already have it on, but if it was in the off mode, which is its default state, simply slide it to the right to click it on. To configure the Web Viewer, we go through the process we just went through. In other words, opening Obsidian settings, then clicking on Core Plugins, and then scrolling down to the Web Viewer. But this time we click on the gear icon in the Web Viewer panel. This opens the Web Viewer settings. And here's where you can configure the Web Viewer. This first one, Open External Links, when activated, in other words, when turned on, will make Obsidian open all external links within your vault in the Web Viewer, rather than in your system's default web browser. Here, you can set a home page for the Web Viewer. Over here, you can designate a folder in your vault in which to save web content. And I previously created a folder called Saved Web Pages, and I set that folder here. You can select the default search engine that will be used when you perform searches using the Web Viewer address bar. I believe the default for the Web Viewer is DuckDuckGo, and I left that as it is, but as you see here, there are some other options: Google, Bing, Brave, and so forth. You can enable the ad blocker. You can set an update frequency for the ad blocker rules. This is in days. And you can clear your Web Viewer data. Basically, by clicking this button, clearing the data, you'd be deleting the cookies, the browser cache data, and the browsing history. Okay, let's move on with our discussion now. There are 3 ways to open the Web Viewer. First, via the command palette. Call up the command palette by pressing the Control and P keys on your keyboard, and then within the command palette, select Web Viewer: Open Web Viewer. This will open the Web Viewer as a separate tab in your Obsidian central workspace. The second way to launch the Web Viewer is by direct link clicking. If you set Open External Links in the Web Viewer settings, as I just showed a moment ago, then clicking any external link in your vault will automatically open it in the Web Viewer. If you click on several links, each one will open in a new tab in your vault in a new instance of the Web Viewer. The third way to launch the Web Viewer is to use the Search the Web command. To access this, first call up the command palette, Control and P, select Web Viewer Search the Web, then enter your search terms, and the results will open in the Web Viewer in your preferred search engine. Let me demonstrate these now. Okay, back in the vault again. I'm going to press the Control and P keys on my keyboard to call up the command palette. And I already have the Web Viewer commands here because I used them previously. If I had not done that, then you can begin by typing web up here, and these commands will show up immediately. We'll talk about show history later. This is the one we're interested in now, Open Web Viewer. So if I click on that, Obsidian will open the Web Viewer in its own tab in my workspace. And you can see here it is, New Web Viewer, and that's the address bar, which can also be used as a search engine. And it utilizes the default search engine that you set when you configure the Web Viewer settings. Okay, I'll close this out. The second way to open the Web Viewer is by clicking on any external links in your vault. So I have a note here with a link to the Google website and a link to the Perplexity AI website. I had set in settings previously, as I showed you, that setting in the Web Viewer configuration that said Open External Links. And as I mentioned at that time, what that does is it tells Obsidian to open any external links you click on in your vault in the Web Viewer. Had I not set that to on, then when I click on an external link in Obsidian, it will open it in my default web browser in my actual PC system. But I do have that setting set on, so when I click on the Google link now, it's going to open it in an instance of the Web Viewer in my vault. And there it is. Let's go back to that note. If I click on this other external link, it'll open another instance of the Web Viewer as another tab at the Perplexity website. So I've got my note with the links. The first one I clicked on was the Google link, and I have a tab with the Web Viewer open to the Google website. The second link I clicked on, the second external link I clicked on in my note was to the Perplexity AI website. And here's another instance of the Web Viewer at Perplexity. So every external link you click on in your vault will open another instance of the Web Viewer in its own tab. All right, let me close these out. The third way to launch the Web Viewer is to use the Search the Web command. So again, I'm going to call up the command palette with Control and P. And now I want the Web Viewer Search the Web command. When I click that, a search window opens, and I can search a word or a phrase on the internet. This is kind of like doing a Google search, except it's happening in whatever default search engine you set in the Web Viewer settings. When Obsidian executes the search, it will display the results of the search in an instance of the Web Viewer using the default search engine that I designated when I configured the Web Viewer settings. So let me search Obsidian Web Viewer. I'll hit enter. And you can see that a tab opened with an instance of the Web Viewer using the DuckDuckGo search engine, because that's what was set as my chosen search engine in the Web Viewer configuration settings. And what it searched on was my search term, Obsidian Web Viewer. And we have various links here, the first one being Obsidian Help. So to review, to launch the Obsidian Web Viewer, the three ways to do that are: 1, call up the command palette and select Web Viewer, Open Web Viewer. The second method is to click on an external link in your vault, but first you must have activated the Web Viewer setting to open external links. If you don't set that to on, then clicking on an external link in your vault will open it in your web browser in your PC system. So for the second method again, first in the Web Viewer settings, turn on the Open External Links option. Then if you click on any external link in your vault, it will open it in an instance of the Web Viewer. And the third method is to open the command palette and select the Search the Web command. As we saw, a search window opens. I can put in a word or phrase to search on the internet. And when I hit enter, Obsidian will launch the Web Viewer and will show the results of that search using the default search engine that was set in the Web Viewer settings. Okay, let's move on. The Obsidian Web Viewer offers a reader mode that displays web pages without formatting and ads. Images, however, are preserved. To toggle reader mode on and off, click on the eyeglasses icon in the upper right corner of the Web Viewer. The reader view is supposed to provide a cleaner reading experience, but personally I find that it often does not, so I rarely, if ever, use it. Let's take a look at it now. Okay, I'm back in the vault. I'm going to open up an instance of the Web Viewer. I set some hotkeys for it so I don't have to keep calling up the command palette. So I'm going to launch it from the hotkeys now. And let's do a search right in the address bar. I'll call it Causes of World War II. And it takes us to our preset search engine, in this case DuckDuckGo, and performs a search on that phrase, giving me a variety of options. And I'll click on one. Better yet, let me just leave it as it is here. Here's the eyeglasses icon in the upper right corner. This is how you turn reader mode on and off. Now it's in the normal mode now. If I click on the eyeglasses to activate reader mode, ads and formatting of this web page will be removed. So there it is. Like I said, it's supposed to provide a cleaner reading experience. In a case like this, I personally don't think it does. If you were on a website that had mostly text, it probably would be better. So I'm gonna click out of this, go back to where we were. Let's go to one of these links here. And here it's discussing World War II. And I'll go into reader mode. And here you can see, with at least with the text part, it probably is a little bit cleaner. And notice that the images are preserved, which is a good thing. I'm going to talk about saving web content next. And when I do, you'll see that Obsidian saves that content in your vault as a note in Markdown format. It looks very much the way reader mode does when you do that to a website. All right, let me go back to normal. And let's move on with our discussion. One of the great features of the web viewer is that it lets you save web page content to your vault. In order to accomplish that, do the following. In the web viewer's settings, designate a folder for saving web pages. And if you recall, when I showed you the settings, I had already designated a folder. So as prep for this, create a folder in your vault, give it a name, designate it to save your web pages, then go into the web viewer settings and select that folder as the place where you want your web page content saved. Once you've set that up, in the web viewer, click on More Options. That's the 3 vertical dots in the upper right corner, right next to the eyeglasses, which was the reader mode icon. And from the More Options, select Save to Vault from the drop-down list. What will happen is the web page's content will be opened and saved as a note in Markdown format in the folder that you designated in step 1 above. And as I pointed out when I demoed it before, images in the web page are preserved in the saved note. Let's take a look at that now. Okay, here's that causes of World War II search we did previously. These 3 icons represent the More Actions options. If I click on them, a drop-down list opens. I'll go over all of these later. Right now I'm interested in this one, Save to Vault. When I click on Save to Vault, Obsidian will convert the content of the web page that's open in the web viewer to a note in Markdown format. And it will save it in the folder of my vault that I designated earlier as the place to save saved web pages. You can see it over here if you look in the navigation panel. I called it Saved Web Pages. I've already have some web pages saved here. And remember, we set that up in the web viewer settings when we configured it. All right, so I'm going to click on that now. It's untitled. It's a note. And here it is here, untitled. And here's what it did to it. Basically, this is how it looks in Reader View. Not exactly, but pretty much the same. So it strips out a lot of the crap and gives you the important content. And as I said, images are preserved, which is a really, really good thing. So are links, as you can see. And since this is a note, I can treat it like a note. I can edit the content. I can give it a title. There it is in the navigation panel. It's a nice, handy way, if you're doing research, to save important content that you find as you're doing searches and exploring on the internet. Okay, I'll close that note. We're back in the web viewer. So again, up here, right next to the eyeglasses, which is the reader mode, the 3 dots is, as you can see, more options. I was saying more actions. More options. We click on it, and one of them is Save to Vault. Simply click on it. It converts the web page to a Markdown format note and saves it in the designated folder. Okay, back to our discussion now. As with a normal web browser, the Obsidian Web Viewer lets you bookmark important web pages. These bookmarks are listed and saved in the Bookmarks tab of the Vault's left side panel. To bookmark a web page in Web Viewer, click on the More Options icon. Those are the 3 vertical dots we just looked at, and select Bookmark. This will open a window that allows you to change the bookmark's title and to select a bookmark group in which to save the bookmark, or to save it outside of a group. Bookmark groups can be created and viewed in the Bookmarks tab of the Vault's left side panel. When you click on a bookmark in the Bookmarks list, it will open the corresponding web page in a new tab on your Vault in a new instance of the web viewer. Let's take a look at that. Okay, back in the Vault again. Over on the very top of the left side panel, I've got my navigation panel, my search. Here's the bookmarks. If I click on that, you can see bookmarks that I've already created. This is a bookmark group, and I have 3 bookmarks in that group, and there's another bookmark outside of any group. The options here are bookmark the active tab. In other words, I might have several instances of the web viewer open in my work area, my central work area, each one indicated by its own tab. So whichever one I have active, I can bookmark that right here. This allows me to create a new group, and this lets me collapse everything. So let me create a new group. I'll call it World War II. And I'll want to bookmark this web page in that group. Now I can do that by clicking on this icon in the bookmarks panel on the left, or I can open up the more options and I can click on bookmark, and I'll do it that way. When I click on bookmark, it's going to open a window and ask me which group, if any, I want to put it in. So here's the title it's giving it. I can change that title. All right. I'll call it Britannica World War II. So I can give it my own title. There's the URL. Naturally, I'm going to leave that alone. If I leave the bookmark group area blank, it'll save it outside of any groups, as in the Zen bookmark over here. But I created a group for this. When I click on that window, any groups I have available will open up and I can select the one I want. So I'm going to select the World War II group and then click Save. And you'll see it now under the title I gave it, Britannica World War II, in my World War II group. So if I close out the web viewer, and the only thing I have is a note now, and in the bookmarks panel, in the left side panel, if I click on that bookmark, it opens that web page in an instance of the web viewer. If I click on one of my other bookmarks, let's say this one about Zen in Wikipedia, it opens that in a separate instance of the web viewer. So I still have my first one open, and in a new tab, I have a new instance of the web viewer with that bookmark, and I can open all these if I want to. So again, to review, this icon up here is the Bookmarks tab in the left side panel. It's where you create your bookmarks, where they're listed and where you can access them and click on them to visit the bookmarked websites. To bookmark the active WebViewer web page, I can either click on this bookmark icon up here, and that will bookmark it, or I can open up more options, the three dots on the right, and select bookmark if this had not already been bookmarked. Once a website is bookmarked, you then have the option to edit the bookmark. In other words, change its title, change its group, or delete it. So that's how bookmarks work in Obsidian's Web Viewer. The Obsidian Web Viewer keeps a record of your browsing history, and you can access that record by executing the command Show History from the command palette. You can delete your browsing history by clicking on the button in the Web Viewer settings. I believe the button was labeled Remove Web Viewer Data or something to that effect. So executing the command Show History from the command palette displays a listing of your browsing history in the left side panel, in a new panel designated by a clock icon at the top of the panel. If you click on a link in the browsing history list, it will open that link in an instance of the web viewer in your Vault Central Work area, in its own tab. If you right-click on a link in the browsing history, it will give you the option to delete that link from the browsing history or copy the URL for that link. If you paste a copied link into a note, it will appear as a normal external link in the note. However, if you paste a copied link into a canvas, then an instance of the web viewer will be embedded in a card in the canvas. And I'll demonstrate all of this now. Okay, back in the Vault again, I'm going to call up the control panel, Control and P. And now I want to execute the command Web Viewer Show History. And it shows in the left side panel my browsing history so far in this session. And you can see the icon indicating this new panel is a clock symbol. So this is the web history or the web browsing history. These are the links I visited so far. If I click on any of these, Obsidian will open that web page in my central work area in an instance of the web viewer in its own tab. So let's do the Britannica one. We'll open here. I'll do the Perplexity one here. Now notice in this case, it replaces the web page it opens in the web viewer. So it does not open it in a new instance of the web viewer, unlike when we were working with links before. Now, if I want it separate, I can open a new tab, then click on a link, and then I'll have it open in a new instance of the web viewer. If I right-click on a link in the browser history, I can remove it from the history, or I can copy the URL. Let me delete this, and it's gone. Let's take this Zen Wikipedia link and copy the URL. And then I'll open a new note, and I'll paste it here. And we'll see that it pastes as a normal external link, just like we're used to in Obsidian. If I click on it, it will open it in an instance of the web viewer. There it is. So I copied a URL from a link in my browsing history, I pasted it into a note, and it pastes as a normal external link. However, if I do the same thing in a canvas, let's move around here a little bit. If I paste that link in a canvas, it will create an instance of the web viewer in a card in the canvas open to that page. There you see it. This is actually the Obsidian Web Viewer. I can increase its size. And it's completely active. I can take any of these links. So again, copying a URL from the browsing history and pasting it in a note simply puts it in the note as an external link. But if you paste it in the canvas, it opens an instance of the web viewer in a card in your canvas open to that web page. And it's an active web viewer instance. So you can search around the web and so forth. Okay, let's go back to the More Actions icon in the web viewer. As we saw, in the upper right corner of the web viewer, right next to the reading mode icon, that was the eyeglasses icon, you'll see 3 vertical dots. They represent the More Actions options, and they allow you to split the web viewer horizontally or vertically. Split right splits it horizontally. Split down splits it vertically. This creates a second copy of the active web viewer in a neighboring pane, either to the right of or else below the active web viewer. Once split, you can use each instance of the web viewer independently. In other words, you can use them to visit different websites. You can also drag a note from the navigation panel onto one of the web viewers and replace the web viewer with the note. That's handy for research purposes. Right? Also, with the More Options, you can conduct a search by clicking on Find. You can search for a word or phrase within the web page that's displayed by the web viewer. The next option allows you to open the existing web page in your PC's default browser outside of Obsidian. You can bookmark a web page. We've seen that already. If I have a new web page that I opened in the web viewer, this option will say bookmark, and if I click on it, it will bookmark that web page, as we saw, and it will appear in the bookmarks list in the left side panel. Once I've bookmarked a website or a web page, if I open up the More Options, this option here will say Edit Bookmark. And if I click on it, it will let me change the name that I used to bookmark that web page. It only changes the name in the bookmarks listing. It does not change the name in the browsing history, so be aware of that. I can save the open web page to my Vault as a note in Markdown format, as previously demonstrated and discussed. And then these last 3 simply allow us to zoom in, zoom out, or reset to a normal zoom state. So those are the various More Options available to you in the Obsidian Web Viewer. Let's look at these. Well, I'm back in the Vault, and I'm going to use the search I conducted earlier in DuckDuckGo for Obsidian Web Viewer. These are the options it gave me. And I'm going to select the Obsidian Help link. So here's the discussion of the web viewer in the Obsidian Online Help. If I open More Options, I can split right, which will open a second instance of this web viewer to the right of the existing one. Now, I can take either one of these and go to other places. So for example, if I click on this link of Core Plugin here, I will go there. So I really have two separate instances of the web viewer, and I can visit any websites that I want to in either web viewer. They don't have to be the same. Likewise, if I'm going to do research, let's say I want to open a note and I want to either make notes here about the web page that I'm viewing, or I want to copy and paste content from here into a note, I can take a note from my vault, drag it over here, and then if I want to, I can copy content and paste it into the note. So once I split the view, initially I'll have two copies of the same web viewer at the same web page. I can take either one or both of them and go to different web pages, or I can replace one of them with a note or something in my vault and use it to assist in my research. So that was split right. Split down does the same thing, only it does it vertically instead of horizontally. So I would have two instances of the web viewer, one above the other. And everything I just demonstrated applies there as well. Find searches within the active web page. So I see the word vault down here. Let me do a search on the word vault. And you can see that immediately it highlights any occurrence of that word in the web page. You can search for a word or phrase using the search feature, and it searches within the active web page in your web viewer. That's the find command. Open in default browser will open this website in the default browser on my PC. There it is. I'm in Firefox now. I'm outside of Obsidian, and it opened that web page in my default browser on my PC system. This says edit the bookmark because I previously bookmarked this page. If I had not bookmarked it, this option would just say bookmark, allowing me to create a bookmark for it. But I already have one, so it says to edit the bookmark. And I have Web Viewer Obsidian Help. I can change that name to anything I want. And save to vault we saw before. It will save the content of this website as a note in my vault in Markdown format. Now this is already in Markdown format, so when I save it, here it is. As you can see, it's basically the same as we see there because the Obsidian Help website is already in Markdown. By the way, I called it Obsidian Help 1 because I already had saved this previously. You could see it here in Obsidian Help, so this is actually a second instance of it. This is what you get when you save it. So there's the original content. Here's what we have. And then zoom in, zoom out. Self-explanatory. So more options. Split the web viewer to the right or below. In other words, create a second instance of that web viewer at that web page and then do with it whatever you want. Find executes a search within the active web page. Open a default browser does exactly that. It opens that web page in your system's default browser outside of Obsidian. Edit the bookmark, change its name, save to vault, save the web page content to your vault as a note in Markdown format, and then zooming within the web viewer. Those are your more options. Oh, by the way, notice that this indicates that this website has been bookmarked. Okay, let's discuss some of the benefits of the Obsidian Web Viewer. Since Obsidian's main purpose is arguably as a knowledge or information management tool, the Web Viewer's real value is as an aid to conducting research. As we've just seen, the Obsidian Web Viewer allows users to open and browse websites directly within the Obsidian interface, eliminating the need to constantly switch between Obsidian and your web browser during research sessions, thus making it easier to read web content without needing to leave Obsidian. It lets you keep research sources open in the web viewer while taking notes in adjacent panes, as we saw when I just split the pane and put a note in the right panel. In that same fashion, I could copy and paste web content from the web page to a note in my vault. I can save important pages to my vault for offline access and annotation. Right? That's when we save it as a note in Markdown format. And we can gather and organize website bookmarks in accordance with our research needs. All right, as always, when out on the web, security should be a concern. And there are some things to consider when using the Obsidian Web Viewer. Obsidian points out that the Obsidian Web Viewer has been independently audited by the Cure 53 security auditing firm. You can read about the security audit results here, and I'll show you this website now. Okay, I'm at that link about the auditing of Obsidian's Web Viewer and other components. This is at the Obsidian website. It's dated December 2024, and it discusses the second audit of Obsidian apps completed by Cure 53. They give you a link to a summary of the findings and to the full report. I think it's a good idea to take a look at both of those. They give you some highlights here, in particular with regard to the Web Viewer plugin. Basically, they give what looks like a favorable report on the Web Viewer. But I would say, even in spite of a favorable security audit, I think users should be very, very cautious in how they use the Obsidian Web Viewer and in what they do with it. So let's return to that discussion. But again, I think it's a good idea to take a look at not only this little summary here, but the more involved summary and the full report. Okay, so as I said, I think even in spite of a favorable audit, there are still some security concerns to be aware of and to consider when using the Obsidian Web Viewer. As stated in the Obsidian Online Help, and I'm quoting directly here from Obsidian's Web Viewer article in its Online Help, Web Viewer is not a replacement for your primary browser. Web Viewer provides a quick way to access web pages for research within Obsidian. However, it does not offer the full functionality, security controls, or extensibility of a dedicated browser. What's very important to note is that third-party community plugins have access to web viewing data, including cookies. And again, I quote from Obsidian's Online Help, Obsidian plugins are not sandboxed and have deep control over the app. This design enables powerful functionality, but also comes with security trade-offs. While Obsidian is running, third-party plugins have full access to cookies in Web Viewer. And Obsidian advises, again, a direct quote, if you use third-party Obsidian plugins, we recommend using your primary browser for sensitive tasks and password-protected websites instead of the Web Viewer. And I would add to that being very security conscious myself, I personally use the Obsidian Web Viewer only for basic research tasks. I never use it for any sensitive tasks or for any websites that require passwords or that require input of personal data. Again, it's an individual choice for every user, but I'm kind of hyper-security conscious, so I use the Obsidian Web Viewer in a very limited capacity. So there you have it, the Obsidian Web Viewer Core plugin, a convenient and easy way to browse websites directly within the Obsidian interface, without the need to switch back and forth between Obsidian and your system web browser during research sessions. Enhance your research with the ability to take notes, copy and paste web content, save web pages, and organize website bookmarks, all within Obsidian. Okay, fellow Obsidizens, that's all I have for now. I'll see you in the next video. Happy note-taking.